So fellas, we're fresh off one of the best cards of 2025 with UFC Paris, and these are the fights to make after UFC Paris. I got the timestamps of the winners of every prelim fighter and the winner and loser from every main card fighter. I'm going to be matchmaking every fighter on the card as I've shown on screen, and we'll start off with Sam Hughes winning the first opening fight of the prelim against Sean O'Bannon. I think for Sam Hughes, it's got to be someone in the top 15 next, in my opinion. I think Sam Hughes versus Angela Hill kind of makes sense at this point. Sam Hughes had a bit of a career turnaround. She's won 4 of her last 5 fights. She's on a 3-fight winning streak. Just got a second finish in the UFC against Sean O'Bannon. And she's kind of had a bit of a career turnaround. And I think we give her someone in the top 15 of the strawweight division. Angela Hill, she's coming off a win, I believe. But, you know, it was a decision win. And Angela Hill nowadays is a bit of a win-loss fighter. She's lost in nearly everybody ranked above her. And she's lost in she's beaten nearly everybody ranked below her. So I think this is a fight that makes sense. Sam Hughes versus Angela Hill. It's a step up in the top 15 for Sam Hughes. She's facing a veteran. She's facing someone who's been in the UFC for a long time. It's a step up in competition from Sean O'Bannon as well. And if Sam Hughes can beat Angela Hill, which is now on a 4-fight winning streak, she's going to be in the top 15. And that's a massive career turnaround because, like I said in the breakdown, I used to say that Sam Hughes might be one of the worst fighters in the UFC. And for Angela Hill, if she can beat Sam Hughes, she's beating somebody on a winning streak. She'd then be on a winning streak herself. And then maybe someone in the top 10 would make sense for Angela Hill. So I'd do Sam Hughes versus Angela Hill. Pretty much Sam Hughes against anyone in the top 15. I feel like she's earned it. 4 of her last 5 fights she's won. 3-fight winning streak. Finished Sean O'Bannon, this young, I don't want to say young, hungry prospect, but this younger fighter. So Sam Hughes, Angela Hill, it makes sense. Rinat Fakhretdinov gets the job done over Andreas Gustafsson, knocks him out in about 30 seconds. I think we're going to give Rinat a big fight from now. I don't know if it's definitely someone in the top 15, but I think we give him a fairly big fight. So I think Vicente Luque is a good fight for Rinat Fakhretdinov. I think Luque might be booked against, I forgot who he's booked against, but he might be booked. But I like this matchup a lot. Rinat is won, 6-1 or 6 fights in the UFC now. He's on a 3-fight winning streak since the draw to Zaleski dos Santos. I know there was a couple of shaky decisions in there, which is why he hasn't been pushed as fast, but he just knocked out Andreas Gustafsson in about 30 seconds. He's 25-2, coming off a really good finish. I think we give Rinat a big fight, maybe like a pay-per-view slot as well, rather than just the fight nights of these European and Abu Dhabi cards. And for Vicente Luque, he's not really been going his way in his career. He beat Temba Garimbo, who was a lower-level fighter. He beat Rafael dos Anjos at 50 years old. He's not really been winning fights on a consistent basis. So I like this fight a lot. It tests Rinat as well. This is the biggest test of his career against Vicente Luque. It's winnable for Vicente Luque as well because, like I said, Rinat barely scraped by Carlos Leal and Nicolas Dalby. I don't want to shit on Rinat now that he's coming off a good win, but I don't think we need to push him too fast. Let's give him Vicente Luque. If he beats Vicente Luque, I think we give him a big push. Maybe someone in the top 10 or top 15 of the welterweight division because Vicente Luque is a big name. It would be his biggest win so far. And if Vicente Luque can beat Rinat Fakhretdinov, then Vicente Luque is going to kind of turn into a bit of a gatekeeper in the welterweight division. And again, it's a big win. The only guy to beat Rinat in the UFC. Another win for Vicente Luque, back in the winning column, potentially someone in the top 15. So Luque versus Rinat, I think it'd be an interesting fight everywhere. Like on the feet, I think it'd be fairly evenly matched. I'd lean towards Vicente, but I think it could be a fairly even striking matchup. As far as grappling goes, you'd favour the wrestling to Rinat, but the BJJ Luque would be interesting too. So Luque versus Rinat, I like this fight next. It gets Rinat basically borderline top 15, and if he does beat Luque, give him someone in the top 15, top 10. So that's what I do for Rinat. It's got to be a big step up next. It's got to be a big name. No more cans, no more people to crush. Let's give him a step up in competition. And then for Robert Brashek, beats Brad Tavares pretty easily. I think a really fun fight for the middleweight division would be Robert Brashek versus Edmund Shabazian. Yeah, I think this would be a really good fight. There's no way this goes the distance. They've both got very, very high finishing rates. Both got very, very high KO rates. 67% of Robert's wins are by KO, 80% of Edmund's are by KO, and they're both very dangerous guys. Robert just went out there and blasted Brad Tavares with a boxing in the third round, got the finish over Tavares, who's pretty gritty. And Edmund Shabazian, I know he's got some flaws, but he's improved a lot, and he's, again, one of the most dangerous unranked kickboxers in the middleweight division. They've both finished Tavares, so I really like this fight. Edmund versus Robert, there's no way it goes the distance. 2 very dangerous strikers, really good kickboxer in Edmund, really good boxer in Robert Brashek. We're not feeding either of them to other killers. We're not pushing them both too far because they have lost in the UFC. I just think this is a really fun fight that you can put on any card and it would heat it up. So Robert Brashek, Edmund Shabazian, get that fight done. Whoever gets the finish in this fight, because it ain't going the distance, give them a bit of a push as well at middleweight. So Robert Brashek, dangerous boxer. Edmund Shabazian, dangerous kickboxer. I'd get that fight done. Then for Sam Patterson, 4-0 since getting knocked out by Yanal Ashmouz. I say we give Sam Patterson what he asked for. Neil Magny. Magny's in a weird position. I feel like there's a lot of good matchups for Magny. I said in in a video the other day, I think him and Kevin Holland could be a good fight. I think he's booked against Jake Matthews as well. But I think Sam Patterson versus Magny makes sense. Sam Patterson's on a 4-fight winning streak, 4 first-round finishes. And to be fair, calling for Neil Magny after that type of run is actually quite humble because most fighters start calling for someone in their top 10. So fair play for Sam Patterson. Went out there and boxed the head off of Trey Waters, grabbed the mic afterwards, called for Neil Magny in December or later on or early 2026. So I say we get the fight done, and I think Neil Magny makes sense. It's a step up for Sam Patterson. He's not just facing another lower level welterweight. You know, Neil Magny's kind of the king of fraud checks. He's coming off a finish himself, and he gets Patterson close to the top 15. If he can beat and even finish Neil Magny in the first round, then you've got to give Sam Patterson someone in the top 10, maybe like a Gilbert Burns, because at that point, he's finished a veteran. The only guys really recently who have done that is Morales and Prates himself. So it's a massive win for Patterson. It's a massive experienced opponent. And for Neil Magny, if he can beat Sam Patterson, I think he deserves a 50k alone just because he's the best fraud checker and the best gatekeeper in the UFC. So I don't know how Magny versus Jake Matthews goes. I think if he beats Jake Matthews, then this fight doesn't really make sense. If he loses to Matthews, I think Patterson versus Magny makes sense. Veteran versus young, hungry guy. A guy on a winning streak versus a guy towards the end of his career. Still both dangerous. Like I said, they're both coming off finishes too. So Patterson, Magny, I like the fight. It gets Sam Patterson as close to the top 15 as you can get. And I think he deserves that after the run that he's been on, so I'd get that fight done. Ante Delija came to save the heavyweight division. I was worried that heavyweight is going to be stale for a couple of years, and listen, I'm not going to act like Delija's a future champion, but former PFL champion, blasted through Tibura in round 1. I'm going to do Ante Delija against Sergey Pavlovich. I know I've been saying for the past couple of weeks that Pavlovich and Gorn make sense, and I still kind of stick by that fight if Gorn loses to Aspinall. But I've been looking at this fight. This could be an easy #1 contender fight you can do for the heavyweight division. I think this would be a heat of a fight too, because you've got a new heavyweight contender in Ante Delija, who just, it kind of reminded me of Pavlovich in the way that he had no care in the world, didn't want to play pity-patty with him, walked forward and absolutely blasted Marcin Tybura. Finished him in the first round without a care in the world. And you've got Sergey Pavlovich. I know he hasn't had a finish for a few years, but that usually tends to be his style. Walking forward with his accurate boxing, breaking people down, getting the TKO. I think this is a title eliminator, makes sense. Delija just blasted through Tibura. He's a former PFL champion. Pavlovich is on a 2-fight winning streak. They're both in a position where they could fight like one more win, one more big win, and they could fight for the belt. So I think for the heavyweight division, you do Aspinall versus Gorn. The winner should face Volkov and Almeida. And then in the meantime, book Pavlovich and Delija, and the winner fights for the belt. It is going to be a bit awkward if Ante Delija wins, because then you've got Delija versus Aspinall and they're really close teammates, so we could have a bit of a Merab and Aljo situation there. But overall, Delija versus Pavlovich I think would be a banger. Two guys who apparently walk forward, two guys who swing, two guys with power, two guys with heavy hands, former PFL champion versus former UFC title challenger. Pavlovich versus Delija. I'm going to be honest, I look forward to this fight more than a Gorn versus Pavlovich. So I want to see this. Delija, get him in a big fight. Don't do Delija versus some shit like, you know, don't feed Delija to a terrible stylistic matchup and getting killed off. We need new names at heavyweight. He's 35 years old. He ain't got time to waste. Give him a contender fight with Pavlovich. The winner of that fight can fight for a belt. I like that fight a lot. And then for Umar Sy, the prelim headliner, gets the job done over Brenton Ribeiro to get to secure finishes only in the prelims. I think a fair step up for Umar Sy would be Ian Cutelaba. I think this is a fair step up in competition. It gets him close to the top 15. Yeah, Umar Sy, 3-1 in the UFC, lost to Menifield in his last fight, bounced back against Ribeiro. Cutelaba was on a bit of a winning streak, just lost to Modestas Bakauskas. I think this fight makes a lot of sense. If Umar Sy can go out there and beat Ian Cutelaba, who's had a bit of a second win in his career, then I think we can start talking about Umar Sy potentially getting someone in the top 15 again, getting another chance in the top 15. And for Ian Cutelaba, this is another winnable fight for him because Umar Sy's a bit inconsistent. And if he can beat Umar Sy, then again, Ian Cutelaba, he's about a fight away from the top 15. So I think this makes sense. Two guys who I'd say are around that top 20 area of the light heavyweight division. They're both kind of win here, lose there. They've both kind of well-rounded styles as well. I like this fight a lot. Umar Sy, Ian Cutelaba, get it on some sort of European prelim card. I like that fight a lot. And then for the main card, Robert Ruchala loses to William Gomez. I think for Robert Ruchala, definitely deserves to stay in the UFC. He made it competitive with William Gomez. I'd do him versus somebody like Andre Fili. I feel like this is the perfect fight to test Robert Ruchala, test how good he's in the UFC. Andre Fili, he's the definition of a win-loss fighter. He's been in the UFC since like 2015. Nowadays, he's winning one, he was losing one, he's winning one, he's losing one. He usually tends to lose to these younger, talented guys and beats people who were towards the end of their career, but then again, he just beat C-Rod. So I think Fili's the perfect fight for Ruchala. If Ruchala can go out there and beat Fili, potentially even finish him, then it shows to me that Ruchala Ruchala's got some potential in the featherweight division. Maybe not top 10 worthy, but, you know, it can go on a bit of a run to the top 15. He can get some good fights after that, and it shows that he's not just a regional warrior. And if Andre Fili can beat Ruchala, then not only is that going to be good for Fili because he's finally on a winning streak, but that also shows us that Ruchala probably isn't UFC worthy, and if he is, he's probably much lower level than we expected. So Robert Ruchala, Andre Fili, step down for Ruchala against a win-loss fighter in Andre Fili. Bit of a, I don't want to say journeyman because it's disrespectful to Fili, but, you know, not someone who's going out there and making noise. So Ruchala, Fili, step down for Ruchala, still against a big name, still against a well-known guy. Like I said, it's the perfect fight to test how good Ruchala actually is in the UFC. I'd get that fight done. And for William Gomez, I said this in the breakdown, and I think now's the perfect time to make this fight. William Gomez versus Giga Chikadze. Let's get the fight done. This makes a ton of sense to me. William Gomez, he was on a 4-fight winning streak, lost to Hyder Emil. He's now won 5 of his last 6 fights. I think it's fair to give him someone in the top 15. Giga Chikadze's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. His last win was in 2023 against Caceres, who ain't in the UFC no more. I think this is a banger of a fight. William Gomez is one of the best unranked kickboxers in the featherweight division. He blasts people with his kicks. His use of range might not be the most dangerous guy, but his kickboxing itself is amazing. And Giga Chikadze, former Glory kickboxing fighter, again, known for having some of the best kickboxing in the featherweight division. That's kind of all he has. He doesn't really have anything but kickboxing. But I think for a stand-up fight, Gomez versus Chikadze would be a banger. Maybe on Merab's, I know Merab's going to be fighting at 320, but maybe you do this. I was going to say Merab because you've got 2 Georgians on the card, but maybe Topuria. You know, if Topuria fights early 2026, you get another Georgian on the card in Giga Chikadze, put him against William Gomez. Gomez versus Chikadze. It's a perfect fight. Step down for Chikadze, step up for Gomez, 2 kickboxers. It makes perfect sense. Let's get the fight done. I think it's finally a fun fight for Gomez, and it's also a good test to see how, you know, how good it is Chikadze. Is he still top 50 worthy? Is he not? Gomez, Chikadze, get it done. Reese McKee. I feel bad for Reese McKee. I still want to keep him in the UFC, and I'd put him in there against JP. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Let's just call him Gene Paul because that's his first name. Essentially, this dude who's come from the Contender Series. Yeah, Reese McKee has an awful record in the UFC. 1-5 in the UFC. And in most cases, people would get cut. But I think we should get him with one more chance in the UFC because first of all, he's extremely fun. You know, it's not like he's not UFC worthy. He's making these fights very, very close. He's extremely fun to watch. He's made for dogfights, and he has a little bit of a murderer's raw in the welterweight division. And Gene Paul, this guy's got a high finishing rate, finished nearly every single one of his wins. Just came from the Contender Series in the main event and got a finish as well. Gene Paul's going to need to fight the UFC, and again, Reese McKee's the perfect opponent. If Gene Paul can go out there and finish Reese McKee, at that point, I don't mind Reese McKee getting dropped from the UFC, going back to Cage Warriors, and we've got a new guy to look out for in Gene Paul. But for Reese McKee, he's fighting a Contender Series guy. He's fighting a guy with less experience. This is the not lowest level. Not that Gene Paul's a bad fighter, but in his last couple of fights, this is like a breath of fresh air for Reese McKee. He's not having to face a monster. He's not having to face a champion from a different organization. He's having to face a Contender Series fighter. Perfect fight for Reese McKee. Perfect fight to get Gene Paul in the UFC. Probably is a banger as well because they're both fun to watch. Reese McKee, Gene Paul for Reese McKee's final chance. I say we get that done. And then for Axel Sola, who got the job done. I don't want to rush Axel Sola. Reese McKee still made it competitive, and again, beating Reese McKee isn't like, you know, if you beat Reese McKee, you know, you're not like the next big thing in the welterweight division. So for Axel Sola, I'd do him against Chaos Williams. I think this would be a really good fight. Axel Sola, high finishing rate on the regional scene, just finished Reese McKee. Chaos Williams, bit of a bad fight IQ fighter, but tends to hit very hard. I just think this is a good scrap to get Axel Sola a bit of a step up in competition. He's facing a more dangerous guy. He's facing the guy who's had more success in the UFC. It's a slight step up for Axel Sola. Not an astronomical step up. We're not pushing him too much. But I think this fight doesn't go the distance. He probably doesn't make it past the first 2. Somebody's getting knocked out. Sola, Williams. Get this on the prelims and some sort of pay-per-view. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. And then for Balaji Oke, loses to Mason Jones. Dropped him in the first round, to be fair. But I think for Balaji Oke, let's give him a veteran, but not a UFC veteran. Let's give him Tofik Musayev. Yeah, if you don't know, Tofik Musayev was a big name coming over from, I think it was PFL. Lost his UFC debut to Mita Bekoroba. He's going to need a bit of a step down in competition. Balaji Oke, 2-2 in the UFC. Haven't really been able to get going. They're 2 kind of lower level guys in the lightweight division. I think Balaji Oke, you know, this younger guy who's come from the Contender Series. Tofik Musayev, this big name in PFL. Again, it's kind of the perfect fight to test how good Tofik Musayev is. If he can't beat Balaji Oke, get him out the UFC and probably call retirement for his career. And for Balaji Oke, he's getting a big name in Musayev, a winnable name. If, you know, if he can beat Musayev, that's going to be good for Oke. And if Musayev can beat Oke, then obviously it's going to be good for Musayev as well. And it kind of shows us that he is a little bit UFC worthy. So, yeah, Oke, Musayev, get that done. And then for Mason Jones, a fight that I really, really like, and actually hope the UFC are smart with the matchmaking. Mason Jones versus Chase Hooper. I think this would be a banger of a fight. If we start off with why it makes sense, Mason Jones, since coming back to the UFC, 2-0, beat OK, beat Stevens. He's going to need a step up in competition. Hooper wasn't a big winning streak, just got knocked the fuck out by Alexander Hernandez. So I think it makes sense from a point of their career perspectives. But again, the fight itself, Mason Jones, an amazing grappler, beat Stevens with the wrestling, just mauled Balaji Oke, and he's got legitimate wrestling from the UK. And obviously, Chase Hooper is a monstrous grappler. His athleticism is awful, his striking's awful, but his pure grappling and submission ability is some of the best unranked at 155. I think this is a perfect fight. If Mason Jones can go out there and beat and even finish Chase Hooper, especially with the grappling, that's a statement-making win for Mason Jones. And I'd say he's probably like one more win away from the top 15 at 155, and it's a bigger name. Everybody knows Chase Hooper, and for Chase Hooper, if he can beat Mason Jones, this isn't an easy fight for Chase Hooper as well. It's not like a big step down. This is, you know, still a dangerous guy, but if he can beat Mason Jones, it's going to be a good win for Chase Hooper. He's back in the winning column. He's got a little bit of momentum as well. He's beat a guy who's on a winning streak. So Mason Jones, Chase Hooper, two heavy grapplers, guy coming off a couple of wins, guy coming off a loss. I think it makes sense. Pay-per-view prelims, I think this is an easy fight to make. Mason Jones versus Chase Hooper. Modestas Bukauskas, obviously Paul Craig retired. Modestas Bukauskas, I think it's time for someone in the top 15 next. I'd give him the loser of Azamat Murzakanov and Alexander Rakic. Modestas Bukauskas, he's on a 4-fight winning streak. I think he's won like 6 of his last 7 fights as well. So he's on a 4-fight winning streak, 3 of them coming by way of finish. Just knocked out Paul Craig brutally. He needs someone in the top 15 at light heavyweight. I think it's criminal that he hasn't been given the opportunity yet. Let him get someone in the top 15, and I think we've got a big fight coming up with Murzakanov and Rakic. I think it's the Aspinall card. I think it's the Aspinall Gone card. But this fight's going to be going on soon. So I think whoever loses that fight, let's give him a Modestas Bukauskas. If Rakic loses, he's going to be on a big losing streak. He's lost to number 12 Murzakanov. He needs to fight outside the rankings. 2 tall, rangy strikers, Rakic and Bukauskas, could be a good fight. And it would make sense. And for Azamat Murzakanov, if he loses to Alexander Rakic, I mean, like I said, he's number 12. He's going to have to fight down. Bukauskas gets an opportunity in the top 15 against the dangerous guy. I think whoever loses that fight between Rakic and Murzakanov, they're going to have to fight outside the rankings. Bukauskas needs to fight in. The fight itself, I think, would be fun because all 3 of them are heavy-handed. Imagine Murzakanov versus Bukauskas too. That'd be pretty much guaranteed not going the distance. So Bukauskas, loser of Murzakanov and Rakic, I think it makes sense. And then for Mauricio Houfe, he got fraud checked. He got dominated, submitted by Benoit Saint-Denis, and that's probably the worst loss any of the fighting nerds have taken so far. For Mauricio Houfe, I think a fight that makes sense is against somebody who actually won on this same card. I'd do Mauricio Houfe versus Caio Fernandes. Yeah, I think this makes sense. Caio Fernandes was actually on this card. He obviously absolutely destroyed the leg of Harry Hardwick. And he's got a couple of wins in the UFC. I think he's on a 3-fight winning streak as well. I think we put them against each other. You've got Mauricio Houfe, who obviously has 0 grappling, but his striking alone is some of the best, unranked at 155. Very dynamic fighting nerd striker. Great display of striking. And obviously Caio Fernandes, he's been on a winning streak. He needs a good step up. He just finished Harry Hardwick. Beat the shit out of Goran Kutladze as well. Beat Mohamed Yahya. Again, one of the better up-and-coming strikers at 155. I think for a striking matchup, this would be an absolute banger of a fight. You've got Fernandes, who's on a winning streak, blasting people with kicks. You've got one of the best strikers unranked in Mauricio Houfe. It's a step down for Houfe away from the top 15. It's a big name and a big step up for Fernandes. I say you get this done. Fernandes versus Houfe. If Houfe can beat Fernandes, then you can start talking about Houfe against the guys around the top 15. And obviously Fernandes, if he can beat Houfe, that's his biggest career win yet. And you've got to start talking about the top 15 next for Caio Fernandes. So I say you get it done. Houfe Fernandes, amazing fight, makes sense. Step down for Houfe, get that fight done. Then for Benoit Saint-Denis, I know a lot of people are saying Gamrot, but there's one fight I hope we see because it would just be a fight of the year contender. Benoit Saint-Denis versus Dan Hooker would be an absolute fucking banger. And it makes sense as well. Benoit Saint-Denis just brutalized Mauricio Houfe, dominated him, like I said, the entire fight, got the finish. He's now on a 2-fight winning streak with 2 submissions in a row, 2 finishes in a row. He's going to need a bit of a step up, and I think Dan Hooker makes sense. Not only does it make sense, but it's just, like I said, it'd be a banger of a fight. Dan Hooker has kind of transformed into one of the funnest fighters in the UFC. That absolute scrap he had with Gamrot, the scrap he had with Jalin Turner. He's been an extremely fun fighter. He's been out for ages. He's been out since August of last year, but his performances have been fun. And obviously, Benoit Saint-Denis is like a finishing machine. He took a couple of losses, but coming up to that fight with Poirier, he was finishing everybody. His grappling's improved tenfold. I think the winner of this fight gets a title eliminator too. If Dan Hooker wins, you've got to give him a title eliminator. If BSD wins, he's now on a 3-fight winning streak. Give him a title eliminator. I think this fight makes ultimate sense. There's going to be people arguing saying that Dan Hooker deserves someone in the top 5 because he's on a winning streak, but this isn't a bad matchup for Dan Hooker. Like I said, if he does beat BSD, then he's going to be getting a title eliminator anyway. And to be fair, he has been out since August of 2024. And for Ben Moore saying that he's, like I said, 2-fight finishing streak, just shut down the best prospect at 155, I think we were rolling with Dan Hooker, and this would be a banger of a fight. Good anti-grappling Dan Hooker with sharp striking. Good, well-rounded fighter who's been exposed before in BSD. This would be, like, this, it's just got Fight of the Year contender written all over it. So I hope we see this fight. Hooker, St. Denis. A main event as well. Like, imagine a fight night main event in a crowded arena. BSD Hooker. It'll be a fucking amazing card. Or maybe if they do an Australian card in early 2026, get Dan Hooker versus BSD as the co-main. Easy co-main. Hooker, BSD. I hope we see that fight. And then for Caio Borralho, the loser of the main event, obviously took a loss to Nassourdine Imavov. He's ranked number 7. He's going to have to fight down the rankings. I said this leading up to the fight, and I think for Caio Borralho, a fight that makes sense is whoever wins between Paulo Costa and Shar Magomedov. Yeah, Costa and Magomedov has been pretty much confirmed for UFC Qatar on November 22nd. That's going to be booked. I think whoever wins that fight, let him have a bit of a step up and let him take Caio Borralho, and I think the fight would be fun regardless. Shar Magomedov, people say he got exposed by MVP, but he's still one of the funnest strikers, unranked in the middleweight division. Great kickboxing, one of the best kickers in this division. If he can beat Costa, him and Borralho would be fireworks. And obviously, Paulo Costa just had one of the career best performances. He absolutely beat the shit out of Roman Kopylov. If he can then go and beat Sharpless Magomedov on top of that, give him a step up against Caio Borralho, I think it makes sense. It's a step down for Borralho against, I guess, an easier opponent than Imavov, but it's still a fun fight because he's facing a striker, 2 fun strikers as well. Whoever wins the fight between Magomedov and Costa are going to want a bit of a step up in competition too. So, Caio Borralho, I think, yeah, give him the winner of Costa and Magomedov. I think it makes sense. Even like a fight night main event would be a banger too. So, Caio Borralho, Shar Magomedov, Paulo Costa, whoever wins that fight, give him to Borralho. And then for Nassourdine Imavov, I feel like there's only one option for Nassourdine Imavov, and I'll talk about the Hernandez-Dorita situation in a second, but it is Khamzat Chimaev. This is the fight to make. With all due respect, you can say that, you know, he didn't get the finish over Borralho or whatever, but just look at the guy's resume. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. He beat Delidze, ranked. Cannonier, ranked. Allen, ranked. Adesanya, ranked. Borralho, ranked. 5 ranked wins in a row. You've got to give him a title fight. Started off the year knocking out Adesanya as an underdog, and that's Adesanya, who was fresh off a title fight with DDP, and just beat unbeaten in 10 years, Caio Borralho, in what was, you know, labelled as #1 contender fight. He is the most deserving contender. And again, listen, if Hernandez goes out there and absolutely brutalizes Reinier Dorita, I can see an argument for saying Hernandez gets a title fight, but then we're kind of going against the whole thing of deserving title shots. Imavov's done more than enough to earn a title fight. He arguably earned it after he beat Adesanya. Now that he's got the cherry on top and had that type of performance after the Borralho, as much as Hernandez and DDP is coming up and that's kind of the next big contender fight, just give him Imavov his shot. I don't want this guy to have to fight again. He should have got the title shot after Adesanya. Now he definitely deserves one. And I think it makes sense as well because you've got the best striker in the middleweight division at Imavov. Fast as shit, hits hard, rapid striker against by far the best grappler in the division in Khamzat Chimaev. So just get the fight done. Early 2026, Chimaev versus Imavov. The winner of this fight can face the winner of Hernandez and Dorita. I think that makes sense. So Hernandez and Dorita, the winner of that fight, can face the winner of Imavov and Chimaev. But yeah, Imavov, he's by far the most deserving contender. He's the #1 guy. This was the #1 contender fight that he won. Let's give him the opportunity to fight Khamzat Chimaev for the belt because, I mean, like I said, he's the most deserving contender. But those are the fights that I would do after UFC Paris. Let me know your thoughts on these fights. Do you agree with them? Do you think they're good? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.